The Mummy from 1999 is one of my guilty pleasures. And yes, most of the films I watch on this channel are from like the 1930s, the 40s, and the 50s. So yeah, this one's a little bit more modern from the 90s. And I have to admit, it's just a fun and silly film. It's part monster movie, part Indiana Jones, with a generous helping of late 1990s CGI. Now, having recently watched the original 5 Universal classic monster mummy movies, you know, like The Mummy from 1932 with Boris Karloff, The Mummy's Hand, The Mummy's Tomb, The Mummy's Ghost, The Mummy's Curse, and even Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy from 1955. I really enjoyed all of these earlier incarnations of the mummy character, although honestly they tend to be much darker and drearier. Poor Carice the Mummy was always being reanimated and usually sent off by someone like George Zucco to go kill people. And he was this creature that, well, I mean, you just kind of felt sorry for. Just put the poor thing to rest already and stop digging him up. Well, the Mummy from 1999 is a much different creature. In fact, a completely different character. He's this priest, Imhotep. And as we get into the film, at the very beginning, we are in the CGI-rich land of ancient Egypt. And this character, Imhotep, he just wants a little bit of sugar with the pharaoh's woman. Well, that's a bad mistake, as it eventually leads to him being captured and, well, lots of nasty things happen to him before he's buried alive in a sarcophagus. Well, we cut to the modern era. Well, modern 1923. And Brendan Fraser is introduced. He is this American Indiana Jones-style hero, Rick O'Connell. And I think he's just amazing in this film. He's kind of a sillier version of Indiana Jones. And he carries this believability throughout the entirety of the film, no matter how ridiculous the situations are that he winds up in. He's leading a bunch of French Foreign Legion soldiers against this massive group of Medjay Egyptian warriors. There's this big fight with this epic Jerry Goldsmith score going on in the background. How or why they're fighting, I didn't completely follow. He winds up with his troops being defeated, and he winds up running through the desert alone. A few years have passed, and we cut to this Cairo library, where Egyptologist character Evelyn Carnahan, who's played by the lovely actress Rachel Weisz, is doing some research, trying to find this lost city of this Hamunaptra, and it supposedly has a lot of gold in it. And this city sort of becomes the silly MacGuffin of the film. And we also meet her brother, Jonathan, played by actor John Hannah, who's kind of a goofball along for the ride. And eventually they are led to where this character, Rick, is now in prison. He's been there, I guess, for a few years. He's got long, shaggy hair and perfect white teeth. And they offer to get him released if he will lead them to this city. And before you know it, they're on a boat journey when those Medjay soldiers attack again. They want to find Evelyn's research, but basically it's a special key in a map. Everybody winds up overboard. They procure some camels, and soon they're on their way again to this lost city. And there are some other American explorers they meet up with who are kind of a competition to them, and they will meet with some less than favorable fates in the film. So they make it to the city, they start their investigating, and the team discovers a tomb buried beneath the statue of Anubis. Now, the Medjay warriors keep showing up from time to time. They attack, and they're led by this warrior, Ardith Bey, and he's basically saying, get away from this temple, it's cursed, it's evil, you gotta get out of it, but they don't listen, and they continue their research. Rick and Evelyn finally discover the sarcophagus with the remains of Imhotep inside, and he's still partially fleshy, or juicy, as they say in the film. And later, Evelyn acquires this Book of the Dead and starts reading from it at the camp, and of course, this starts the reanimation process. Now, so much of this film has you thinking both, oh, come on, why would you do that? And, oh yeah, they're doing it, and here comes the mummy. And sure enough, old Imhotep is reanimated and starts bringing death, destruction, and plagues too. And again on the CGI. Some of it looks really great with the mummy, some, yeah, not so great. And you know what? I'm going to keep this review intentionally high level. It's a wild adventure, and you really need to see it for yourself if you haven't. And again, don't read into it too much, because there's plenty of silliness, probably massive plot holes and so on, but just enjoy this for the Indiana Jones meets the Monster of the Week treat that it really is. Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz really has a great chemistry together in an Indy Marion sort of way. John Hannah does a great job as the Goofy brother, and of course Arnold Vosloo was really noteworthy as the mummy character, even when he's covered with all the silly CGI effects. And this Kevin O'Connor character was also great as the creepy and scheming bad guy, Benny Gabor. There's just a lot of things I could talk about with the film, but just check it out for yourself. Again, CGI is a little dated. It looks good in places and a little silly in others, but it all works together. And you know what I really respect about this film is that it goes easy on the bad stuff. I mean, there's really minimal profanity, a tiny bit of indecent dress at the beginning of the film, a little innuendo, and even the violence itself is largely constrained to off-screen. You know, it's frequently depicted in artistic sort of ways. I mean, for instance, we don't see Imhotep getting his tongue lopped off. We see him being held down, a knife going towards his tongue with a slicing motion, and then the camera pans out of frame. We, the viewer, know what happened, but we don't have to see it necessarily. Or the mummy absorbs the life force of somebody, but we don't see this happen. We just see the shadow of the body being absorbed on the wall. You know, that sort of thing. I wouldn't call this film necessarily family friendly. I mean, it's okay for big kids who like a creepy scare, but otherwise the content is not too bad for a PG-13 film. I also have to point out the amazing Jerry Goldsmith soundtrack. It is just so unbelievably good. Do yourself a favor and look up some of his music. Tracks like The Camel Race or the track Night Borders. It's just so good. This really was one of Goldsmith's finest scores. Do yourself a favor and just go watch it. And as you watch it too, listen for the end credit music as well. It really recaps the themes of the film well. Everything is so well done with this film. It's from 1999. It's a fun, silly adventure, monster film. And it's one worth checking out. Hollywood, please, make more movies like this, okay?